Yeah, push record button once and then push it again.
Right, okay.
To record.
Hello, my name is Andrea Thompson and I'm here at Cresswell Crags, and today's date is the 5th of November, and I am here with Jeannette, and we're going to talk a little bit about her father as part of the Mining Memories programme. Would you like to take over?
Yes. I was brought up in...
Say name.
Sorry?
Name.
Oh, my father... my name, sorry. This is going to be fun. My name is Jeannette Green, and I was brought up in a family where my father and two of my brothers worked down the pit. The pit being Island Colliery in Staveley. It was quite normal for people who lived where we lived to work down the pit. We lived on a council estate where a large percentage of the residents had miners in their family.
Whereabouts did you live?
I lived in Staveley area, Maston Moor, which was a large council estate. Although there were the usual fights, it was usual on the estate, it was usual for people, children in particular, fight against other children who weren't in mining families. Very close-knit community. Miners always looked after miners and their families, and my recollection is that miners were proud of what they did, of their craft. Very hard-working people. What I didn't like about my dad being a miner was him coming home absolutely filthy, even though they had pit showers. And my mum always used to say, you know, you're not putting those clothes in this house, you can dump them outside and I'll fetch them in and wash them. Mum didn't particularly like Dad working nights, but that was just one of the shifts he had to do. It was awful for us when as I'm one of 6 children, and it was awful for us when Dad was working nights, because particularly if it was the school holidays, we were always getting told off for making too much noise. It wouldn't be my dad telling us off, it would be my mum first, and then if we carried on, Dad would rush down the stairs and threaten us. Get outside and you'll not come back if you don't behave yourselves. I was very proud of being part of that community. It taught me values, honesty in particular. That's one thing about the mining community. If they've got something to say, they will say it, and you know absolutely where you stand. Obviously, being a child in a mining community, we all went to the same schools right the way through from infant to secondary, and we forged great links with each other that still carry on today. You can always tell somebody who is the child of a miner. There's a way of addressing people, an easygoing attitude. Very often my family members are told that we'll talk to anybody, but again that's from growing up in a community like we did, that if you've got something to say, you said it. When the pits did eventually close, I'd got just one brother and my father, who was a deputy by that time, and so had quite a bit of responsibility. They were still working there. For my dad, he was coming near to retirement anyway, so it didn't have much of an impact on him, but for my brother it did. He'd got a young family, a mortgage to pay. Fortunately, they did get a substantial redundancy payment. But the best thing for my brother was that it gave him an opportunity to join the police. And he's done very well in that career. He's still there now, all those years on. I do recall, though, about the miners' strike. And
Is that the 84, 85 one?
That would be the 85, 85, yeah. And I can remember both two of my brothers were at the pit then, and I can remember being in Chesterfield out with my friends having a drink, and because my youngest brother was an apprentice, he couldn't strike. I walked into this pub with my friends, and my younger brother was there with some friends of his, and there was a group of miners staring at my brother, and my brother was staring back, and I thought, he's going to get beaten up. So what I did, I went up to my brother and I said, get out of the pub now, Jed, there's going to be trouble. And he said, oh, I'm not bothered about them. And I said, well, I'm bothered about you, get out. And I walked, because he still stood there, my brother. I thought, I've got to take action here. So I went straight up to these other guys, these miners, and I threatened them, if they laid one finger on my brother, it wouldn't just be me having a go back, it'd be my whole family, particularly my other two brothers. And I remember walking away from that, my friends were like, oh my God, they're going to come and hit you, and mine's your brother. And I said, they'll not dare touch me. And I was so angry about it, my brother being threatened like that. And I got hold of my brother and I went, you, out of this pub now and get off home. And that went through our community that I'd done that to these miners, and I was like, oh dear. I was quite embarrassed about it because it made me sound like a right, tough so-and-so and aggressive, which is not nice in a female. But yeah. But that's, I guess that's another thing of mining families, you don't touch my siblings, etc., etc. If you want to hit any of my siblings, then you have to get my permission. That's what and that seems to have disappeared these days. There isn't that community feeling anymore.
It's not about bonding.
That's right, the bonding. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just as a family you bond, although you probably don't get on, you still got that bond. But when you're living in a community like we was, it was just one massive family in a way. Even if you didn't like them all, you were still, going to stick up for them. And and it was quite good actually. I think I did learn a lot through growing up in a mining community, definitely. But the best thing about it was, a primary thing about that community was everybody would speak their minds. There'd be no sort of saying something that you didn't mean, just to be, pacify people. You just say what you needed to say. Everybody knew where they stood, and again, you knew that if anything were happening to you, that there'd be people straight there. Not just your family from outside as well, be there to help you. So, but yeah. But I think it did adversely affect quite a lot of people when, not just financially, when the pits closed. I know a lot of ex-miners suffered mental health as a result. My dad was ill for a while. Although he wasn't worried financially, but it was suddenly like the rug had been pulled from under his feet, I think, and having had that responsibility by the position he was in and having that structure to his life, and suddenly that's all gone. And you see, these days, when people are going to be made redundant, they've got people they can talk to prepare for redundancy. They didn't have that then, not at all. So, but saying that, like in the Staveley area, where my dad worked and my brothers, now that's all been redeveloped, businesses, the business parks now, aren't they? Where the pits were, and that's good to see because that's regeneration and opening up jobs, and so it goes on and on, you know. So my dad looks back on his pit days with fondness, actually, from being a young man in the pit, and then although he did have a couple of breaks doing something else, he was a driving instructor at one time, had his own business, but yeah, I know that he's never regretted being part of that industry. I think he has a sense of pride about being part of that industry. So.
Right, thanks Jeanette, we'll leave it there and we'll have a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
On the button.